what is a step that you can take right now? What is an action item that you can do today, the next 24 hours? So don't tell me you want to invest in real estate or whatever. Like, that's cool. That's not a step. You can download a sample deal package. You can send an email to Ruben to say, thank you for that episode. You can leave a 5-star review on Ruben's podcast. There's a step you can take that either pours into someone else or allows you to get a step closer to where you want to be. What is that step? Identify it and take action. That's a challenge for the next 24 hours. Figure out what you can do right now and do something to move yourself closer to the person you want to be.
So you've caught on. You've realized that the digital real estate game is taking over the physical real estate game. What I mean by that is every real estate transaction that occurs these days starts with a digital asset, such as this phone. Whether it's an interface, whether it's a software, whether it's a system, whether it's the MLS, whether it's an Airbnb or Vrbo, it starts with a digital touch point. So in the digital asset series, we are going to talk about marketing. We're going to talk about digital marketing. We're going to talk about content. We're going to talk about branding. We're going to talk about the very own things or verticals that lead to real estate transactions, which you will realize that the majority of them are all virtual. This is why we're starting this segment, because as important as we understand physical real estate is and will always be indestructible, because people will always need a place to live, we understand that now technology is playing a whole different ball game in the real estate space, and you want to make sure that you have this on your tool belt and you understand how to leverage these digital assets so that you can have these experiments that can then lead to these physical assets. Now, the same rules of the game apply as they always do in the lab. Get your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today I have the pleasure of having John Casmon in the lab with us. We're certainly overdue. I'm so excited to have you in the lab with us, John, because this is a true experimenter and practitioner who's taken, again, his experiences and leveraged them into successful experiments. So John is the founder of Casmon Capital Group, the co-founder of Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit, and then Target, the founder and of course host of the Target Market Insights, which I was telling John offline, I'm so excited about even talking about some of that, because he is one of the only podcasts that I've heard where he's able to take multifamily and marketing together into one place, and he's actually inspired us to actually do something of the same and kind of bring branding and real estate under one roof. So, but without further ado, John, welcome to the lab, my friend. How's it going?
Ruben, I am excited to be in the lab. Thank you for inviting me, man. I'm happy to talk about kind of my experiences and the experiments I've had along the way and give some great value for all of your listeners, because guess what? Life is all about experimenting, and you have to try a couple things, figure out what works for you. And I'm happy to share my journey a little bit and give you some tips and insights that have helped me along the way.
Absolutely. That's why we're here. So John, just the level set, because I like to give people some context. I think it's really important. You had over 15 years of corporate marketing experience. You then took that on and you took it into multifamily real estate, where today you're actually, from what I was looking at, and you got correct me if I'm wrong here, that's over 1,000 units, you know, whether you're on the acquisition side and selling side, which is it today? What are you controlling for the asset? Is it over, are we talking over 100 million? Where are we at as far as like what we're managing as far as the portfolio goes?
Yeah, we've partnered with investors to acquire over our just under $100 million worth of apartments. We've sold about 40% of that. So we're now kind of, the portfolio is always in fluid states. But but we've been partners in close to $100 million worth of real estate at this point. So we're excited about some deals we have both currently, we're going to be closing soon, as well as some other deals we have in the pipeline.
Yeah, and the reason I stopped there is just because we're going to talk about marketing in a second because it's always changing, but so is the cash flow, and so is the portfolio, the amount that you're managing. So I always want to give the person the opportunity. You might have just closed the deal yesterday, the way you guys are moving and the way the market is moving so quickly. See, you see, you're not playing around. So you're doing the thing, and I admire you, and I want to give you kudos to that, because we have individuals who come in who are walking the walk, talking the talk, right, doing them both. So it's a pleasure to have you here. But I got to ask you, we're here, you're the corporate background, and I'm just so curious to how you've been able to kind of mix the two in, or actually was it a transition? Do you even still leverage the marketing piece from your experience into your deals today? How is that transition? How's that gap? Because that's what I'm very interested in, kind of connecting the dots as kind of we go into your journey and where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to start there, right? So to give some context, I spent 15 years in corporate America, and then I really realized I didn't have control over my life, my career, my future, and certainly didn't have flexibility. So I pivoted to become a full-time real estate professional working with other people. So the question is, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that I did was I leveraged the skills that I learned in corporate America, working in advertising and marketing for 15 years. And when it finally clicked that real estate and apartment investing, which is what I focus on, it really was a business. And with any business, it breaks down into core components, right? You've got sales and marketing, you've got human relations in operations, and you've got finance. And most things fall underneath one of those three larger buckets. So when you look at it that way, the brick and mortar, the cost per square foot, and all of the other technical things don't matter quite as much. I'm not saying you don't need to know them, you do. But if you have skills that transcend a specific industry, those skills are transferable. So when I locked into the 15 years of advertising and marketing experience to understand branding, not just corporate branding, but personal branding and messaging and public relations and messaging and connecting with people, right? When you understand those things, that's all transferable. So the moment that clicked for me was huge and it was powerful and it empowered me. And that's the thing I want everyone to understand, is that it doesn't matter where you're at today. If in order to get from where you're at today to where you want to go, you have to understand the skills that you can leverage that exist, and then the skills that you're going to have to nurture and develop. And if you understand those two things, now you can create a pathway to get there. And that pathway may be with the help of coaches and mentors. It may be with advisors. It may be with more education. It may be more with more experience and practice, experimentation. There are a lot of different ways to get there, but you first have to figure out, what skills do I embody today? What skills do I need to develop to get there? And then how do I either develop it, or we didn't talk about this yet, but how do you leverage other people who have that skill set? All right. So when I talked about not knowing the cost per square foot and some of that stuff, well, guess what? The easy answer is go find somebody who knows the cost per square foot, partner with them, hire them, bring them on as vendors, right? And now you can control it as a manager. So I'm more of a CEO type with that corporate marketing experience. I don't have to know how to do every little thing, but I need to know how to find the right people and how to create the systems, processes, and decision trees that allow us to make the right decisions and create an effective system.
So this is interesting, right? Because, obviously I looked into your background and you talk about leveraging a skill set. And I honestly think that sometimes we're kind of just pigeonholed into, hey, you look at school and then you look at career, and this is what I am and this is what I do. But I always tell the youth who are, and I'm saying the youth as if the people who are coming right after me, right? Because I'm still learning as well. I'm a student of the game for sure. That's why I have individuals like you step into the lab to give us a lot of game. But when people are coming out of school, sometimes it's their focus on, hey, career, but really it's just, hey, what skill set do I want to learn? Instead of thinking of like the firm, even say, hey, what am I going to be exposed to, right? So that those skill sets, are they transferable to other jobs? Because the reality is, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're in a career, you have to be able to take a specific skill set and and apply it for the, whether it's a market need, whether it's a demand, whether it's your job description to that job. So for you, when it was transitioning from the corporate to literally getting into real estate, what did you turn to first? Was it, what skill sets did you see were transferable in your eyes into the real estate? I know you talked about it's kind of exactly like a business, but for you, what was that next step, and what did you see as, hey, here's a skill set that I can actually lean on right away?
Well, I think before you jump into the skill set, the first thing is the mindset.
Mm.
Because for many people, just to make that transition is a scary, harrowing event, right? Like to leave a cushy W-2 job, especially if you're crushing it, right? If you got, a high salary, you got golden handcuffs, the thought of leaving just stays a thought. It's not something you're going to practice because you're like, why would I walk away from this? The risk is too much. So let's talk about the risk and the mindset. I mentioned that, I was working full time, and I've worked for many different brands. I worked on Coors Light, Nike, Mountain Dew, Pepsi brands, and many others. But I really got going with General Motors, and that was really the first company. I worked there on the client side directly. I was in Detroit at headquarters at the Renaissance Center, and I was there from 2007 to 2011. So during that time frame, I watched this go into bankruptcy. And more importantly, I watched people who had dedicated their careers to this company. And when they got let go and they didn't have a plan B, and I saw the way that impacted them, it shifted my thought process from get a good job, go to college, get a good job, work that job until you retire, and then ride off into the sunset to you can't rely on any company. I don't care who it is. You're never safe. Don't make an assumption that because you've done the right thing, you kept your head down, you whatever. Nah, that's not how this works. We are numbers. I've seen an organization chart for a conglomerate of a company where they have the North America, vehicle sales and service and marketing, VSSM department. They had our entire department, everybody in the entire world who worked in this division, they had on a big board everybody's name with a little dot, color coded. And green meant keep that person, they're great, they're a rock star, cool. Yellow meant they're pretty good. Well, they're coachable, they're workable, whatever. Red, hey, first chance we get to let these people go, get them out. When you see that and you see you being represented as a little minuscule ant in the grand scheme of things, you lose that ego, and I was doing cool stuff, man. I was going to Super Bowl and Maxim parties and hanging out with celebrities. So in my head, I was crushing it, man. I was the dude, Yeah. And, you see something like that, it will bring you back down to reality. And that's what happens. A lot of times people, they get these egos working these jobs, and I'm the director of blah, blah, blah. No one cares.
Yeah.
No one cares. So the first part is that's the biggest thing for most people, is being able to step away from the titles and to actually craft the life they want for themselves. So your question was more about what skill set did I develop? And I think that personal awareness of the grand scheme of things was innately invaluable for me, because one of the things that I never realized was a gift was the ability to step back and see the actual picture, not just the rosy picture that I had painted for myself, right? But to step back and say, okay, these things are great now, but they don't love you. They love the advertising manager of Buick, right? And I just happen to be in this seat today. And make no mistake about it, the moment you no longer wear that title, those accolades, adulation, whatever you want to call it, will go to the next person in that seat. So how do I take the knowledge from this, the relationships from this, and leverage that to my advantage? I've been able to work on these massive campaigns, and guess what? I've had a chance to sit down with some of the most brilliant minds in all of marketing, from digital marketing to point of sale or retail to, social media, Instagram, Facebook, all of that stuff. So I've taken some of those best practices, I've taken some of those relationships, I've taken some of those learnings, and I've continued to get better. So I doubled down on that. And like you, a student of it, where I didn't assume I knew everything because I had this resume. And in fact, things move so fast that I assumed that I was already outdated, because by the time it clicked for me to focus on this was probably a year or two after, I started that transition period. So I had to step back and almost relearn things. Like email marketing was completely different when you're working on big brands than when you are an entrepreneur and you're focusing on a personal brand. The way General Motors sends an email is going to be vastly different than the way, John Casmon at Casmon Capital Group sends an email, right?
Can you actually? So it's interesting because I knew I would want to piggyback on this, but can you talk about that difference before it slips through the crack? Why
Absolutely.
is that messaging different? Is it because you're trying to serve the stakeholders? Is it because it's a bigger budget so we can split test a lot of different things? Like what is the main difference between John at home, who's trying to start his first syndication, or versus GM Pontiac and some of the accounts you were in charge of?
Yeah, let's ladder this up outside of just me, right? So let's talk about kind of a small entrepreneur, or small business owner, and let's talk about a large corporation. For the large corporation, you're right. The first obvious thing is budget, right? How much money do we have to play with? If you have a large budget, you can test, you can do split testing, which basically means that you're going to create a piece of content, an email, for instance, and you're going to change one thing in the two. One might be the call or the call to action. So in one, you might say register now or whatever. The other might say set up a call, right? And you'll test to see which one gets more engagement. You may change the headline. One might say something, and the other will say something slightly different. Which one gets more open rates, right? And then once you have that information, you can then use that for that campaign, but also for future campaigns. The second thing is resources. So tied to budget, how many people do you have at your disposal to look at this? If you've got a team of people, if you got 6, 7 agency people to look at this and develop an email marketing campaign, you can develop a campaign for the quarter, for the entire year. And you can map out the schedule, and it's kind of easy to do because everyone's going to say, hey, for this month, we're going to focus on this, or we're launching this product this month. So we want to make sure we're highlighting our partnership with this company or whatever. So you can plan that out in advance, and you can figure out what conversations you want to have. You can integrate. You and I were talking about integration earlier, right? So I might create something where we're going to do a theme. So maybe on social media, we're going to post one thing. And then in my email, we're going to post something along that same line. And then I might create a podcast, or I might create a TV spot, or whatever it is. That's all in the same thing to spark conversation through these different verticals. Yeah. When you are a small business owner, you rarely have the ability, the resources, the budget to think that far in advance, because you are trying to survive. And I know that it may not be as sexy, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, people listening to this are investors and entrepreneurs. And when you're an entrepreneur, you are trying to keep the lights on and keep the balls in the air. Even if it's not a cash flow issue, you're typically still running into resource issues. You're trying to keep people employed. Most people I know right now who own businesses are having a hard time finding quality employees. So trying to find the employees to so you can expand, so you can take on more projects, getting the right vendors, getting the right accountant, making sure that all of your documentations is correct. That's the thing that a lot of business owners, struggle with, is trying to keep everything together. So if you now have to be the marketing person to plan 6 months of marketing or vertical integrations, and what tweet do you want to make on Thursday, September, whatever, at 6 a.m., you're not thinking about that. That's not a priority for this moment. And entrepreneurs live for the moment, and they live for the immediacy of what needs to be handled. So to think about a social media message 3 months in advance seems trivial to them. So that's the challenge. When you have a team of people that can dedicate to that, you can test it, you can, try it out, you can build it out. And when you're by yourself, most of the time you're operating more on an as needed basis. You're posting whatever you feel needs to get posted for the day. Maybe you're planning out the week, and you go from there. On top of that, so outside of the budget, outside of the resources, I think one of the other things that is really important is understanding how everything works together. And again, most of the time, if you have a professional marketing team, um, they know how it all works together. They understand objectives. They understand what those things are. But if you are small business owners, you may not necessarily see how this social media post needs to correlate with this email message being pushed out at the same time. So it can be a little confusing.
Yeah. So it's interesting when you say that, because you talked about keeping the lights on. And I think that's something I really was thinking about of when you think of the type of marketing at the corporate level. One of the things I was going to ask you, is it more out of a kind of a long-term kind of strategy? But then I did listen to one of your other podcasts where you talked about where, what budget that you had is the budget that you had. How do you feel that one should tackle the personal branding piece, and should one look at, hey, Coca-Cola is doing this, I should start doing the same? It's a complete different ball game with a complete different budget. So when you're talking to the guy next door, let's say, who, we tie this back to multifamily, we're talking about personal branding, which is different than corporate branding. It's about how can I know, like, and trust John. What is that? What is the one thing that, from your experience, should be the thing you focus on the most in your branding? If you're thinking as an individual, personal brand, what is that one thing that you think is probably the lowest hanging fruit one should address their time, energy, and maybe resources on?
Yeah, I think branding, first and foremost, is it's not about what you say. I think that's the big difference. Like, people, if you don't really think about it, branding and marketing can easily be confused for each other. They are very different things. Marketing is all the stuff you say. It's all the stuff you do. It's all the messages you put out there. Branding is how other people see you. Okay. Now, marketing can help your branding, but it's not your branding. So you have to first and foremost think about, what do you want people to say about you? What do you want them to know about you? That's branding. It's not about the campaign. Let's give you an example.
Yeah,
Nike. Okay. Nike's done a lot of marketing campaigns. They've had a lot of celebrity athletes. They've done a lot of, commercials, right, over the years. Their branding is what you feel when I said Nike. Are you wearing Nikes right now? Do you think they're the superior athletic shoe? Whatever you feel about Nike, that's the brand. Nike and Adidas make the same product, right? They make shoes. They make athletic shoes. Nike, Adidas, Under Armour. The only difference is their branding. Now, they'll tell you this one is, this technology or whatever it is, but they're shoes. They're athletic shoes. You have a choice of what athletic shoes you want to wear. You make a decision based on branding. And then there's some facts and whatever else you want to call it, emotional reasons that you justify that, but that's the branding. If you feel like Nike has a superior shoe and they have the best athletes in the world, that's the reason you're giving yourself to justify that. But the branding is a superior shoe. Okay. That's how you feel. If I feel like I've had a terrible experience with them, that's what their brand is to me. I love Nike, by the way, but just giving you an example, right? That goes across any industry. About yourself and personal branding, it's the same thing. What are people going to say about you? And this goes to even if you're an employee. What is the brand you're developing? When your name comes up in a room that you're not in, what will people say? How will they feel? That is branding. Now, there are things that you can control to help lead people to see the version of you that you want, especially if you're making a transition, right? If you're going from one environment to a different environment, you've got to tell that narrative. You have to help people see you in the light that you want to be seen. So if you want people to understand you are a real estate investor, one of the first things you need to do is show them that you invest in real estate. I mean, it seems pretty basic and intuitive, but that's one of the things you would need to do. So as a personal brand, you'd want to develop content that shares that, right? That educates people on what it is you do, why you have a great process, what you look for in a property when you're making those investments, right? Or whatever your ask is. You have to show people that. And that's why personal branding is so key, because I can know you, but if I don't know you in the avenue that you want me to know you in, we cannot do business. If people saw me as an advertising guy, they're not going to want to invest with me if that's all they know me as, because they're gonna be like, oh, you do this? Think about it. I just talked about Nike. I may have mentioned Apple before. It was in my head. I don't know if I said it out loud. But if Apple came out with the running shoe right now, would you run out and buy it?
Interesting what you're saying, John, because I'm going to play devil's advocate too. Is um, Apple, so Apple made it easy to navigate their products, right? And so if they made a shoe, I'd be like, okay, that's interesting. But I think I trust their core values and being able to make a quality product. Now, does it necessarily transfer over to the shoes? Not necessarily, but as a brand, I do trust them because I got the AirPods, I got the phone, I got the Mac, I got what else, right? So that's actually interesting because I've had this conversation with someone about, would you rather do you want to do Casmon Capital Group branding or John? Yeah. And the interesting conversation there is, if you look at like a Richard Branson, if you look at like Elon Musk, their personal brand gets more eyeballs. And then so whatever they tackle next, their venture, people trust them and then they follow. So I think one thing that I am leaning toward probably is a personal branding, because I'm like, hey, if I know John, he's had success in corporate, he's had success with syndication, and he's telling me that he wants to take me to space, I trust that he's going to shake the right hands, make the right strategic partnerships to get us there. I invest in John. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great point. And let's go back to the Apple example, because you're right. But think about where Apple was. Apple was at computers, right? When they came out with the iPod, I think a lot of people scratched their heads because what? Sony Walkman was killing it then, right? So when they came in, people scratched their heads. They crushed that. Then what do they want to get into? The cell phone business. People scratched their head. People, I mean, it's easy to look at it now, but if you go back, Nokia was killing it. You know what I mean? Like all of these other phone companies laughed at Apple trying to create a phone, right? And to your point, that's because we looked at it based on the output of a cell phone, a computer, a music player. And what they focused on was the design, the user experience, the technology, the simplicity and seamless of the use of it. And because they were focused on that technology and electronics, it was easier for them to do that. We talked about all that other stuff. If they came out with a TV, would you fully expect them to have a quality TV? I would.
I would. Yeah, I would. I didn't know if you were baiting me into it in another. I would.
I think they would crush. I think they would crush, because I think they've demonstrated the ability to create a UX in the electronic space.
Yes.
That is seamless and simple, right? The tablet, so I think that's what we recognize them for. We've given them the leeway to say, hey, anything in the electronic space,
you got that.
If they come up with it, I would trust Apple to do a good job of it. Nike with shoes. If Nike came out with a kitchen or something like that, or a restaurant, I think we'd all scratch our heads. So, so that's kind of the branding thing, right? And you have to figure out what is the brand. And I just talked about it. I've never heard Apple say this, but when you think of them as an electronic technology user experience design company. And that's where they've got the leeway and carte blanche to play. And I think most people give them credit for. So you talk about the personal brand versus the corporate brand. This is actually another great question, because if I would take this a step further, it comes down to also whether or not you have a product or a service. Because
I haven't heard that one.
If you have a product, it's easier to focus on that product, right? We can focus on the iPad. We can focus on the iPhone. We can focus on, the headphones. We can focus on that product. We can highlight the technology, everything that went into creating this thing. When you have a service-based company, in particular one where it's not transactional or just something that is simple, like a dry cleaning service or somebody cleaning your home, but an investment company where I really have to trust this company or this individual, that's where you really want to get to know the person. I mean, you talked about Virgin, but those companies, Virgin, everything Elon Musk has done, they've kind of had to deliver on that product or that expectation. And when you do that over time, people then give credit to the people behind the scenes. And those individuals now get to take credit and whatever ventures they go on to next, they get a chance to get, again, the courtesy of recognizing this person's behind it, so we're interested in it. So when you are debating, hey, should you be focusing on building a personal brand or a corporate brand, I would definitely lean more towards a personal brand if it was a company that needed people to believe in you. If it is more of a product, for instance, let's take Yeti coolers. I have no
Mm,
idea who's behind Yeti coolers, right? But they've focused on making a quality product, and that's what people know. That's what people push. So if it's a tangible product that can compete in the marketplace, I would say lean more on that product because people don't need to know you, right? If
yeah.
I'm looking for glasses or a cup or whatever that thing is, Zoom, I don't need to know the person behind it. I need to know the product works the way the product is supposed to work, and it's superior, and it will deliver on the needs that I have. If I'm looking to invest and take a risk or a gamble with someone, right? And I'm using the word gamble loosely, but if you are a shareholder and you're trying to invest in a company, or you want to, park money with an enterprise or an investor, you really want to get to know who that person is. Can I trust this person? Do they have the knowledge to understand what's happening in the marketplace, to pivot? Those are the kind of things that you're going to be looking for. And who are they at their core? Who is this person? What makes this person up? How does their mind work? Those are the things you're going to be looking for. And in what we do, and in a lot of service businesses, especially if you're, B2B. So if you are working with other businesses, you really have to get a chance to develop that relationship, because there may be other vendors who do exactly what you do. Think about a property management company. I could go out and get, you know, 10 different property managers easily. So what's going to make me hire one property manager versus the other? Well, it's going to be not just the relationship, but if I can see a proven track record, I get to know them, I get to trust that they can do what they say they're going to do. They demonstrate that throughout our interactions. That's what's going to make me still sell on this property manager over another property manager. And that goes back to the Nike, Adidas athletic shoe thing. I've seen Nike shoes over the last 30 years. I've seen them employ the top athletes in the world. I've seen them with superior designs. I've seen the way they've operated. I can trust what my experience is going to be when I put on a Nike shoe. I know the way their sizes run, right? When you put on other shoes, you may not have that same experience. And it starts even before that, right? It starts when I decided what stores I want to go to. Okay, well, what kind of products does the store have? When I buy products from this store, do they last? Are they quality, or do they break and fall apart a couple months after buying them? So all of that goes into it, right? So that experience is really, really important. And if you are looking to build a brand, you have to understand where your strengths are, lean into those strengths, but then also understand where you have some challenges, where maybe other folks have a competitive advantage, and where you might be losing potential customers and clients.
That was so well put, John. And you're on a roll, so I didn't want to even interrupt. But and so it's interesting because you have, again, the experience to have hindsight. I've never heard of the branding, the personal branding and corporate branding being separated from the product versus service. I thought that was really insightful, because now a lot of us are in the service-based business where we do need to have that know, like, and trust. I want to piggyback on that though, because you said something interesting that I'm kind of thinking about as you're talking, and I want to maybe kind of unpack this as our listeners. Some of them are advanced, or some of them are like us. They have a proven track record. What would you say? How do you go to the next level when you're a Pepsi and a Coca-Cola, or a Nike and an Adidas, where both of those brands are actually both have proven track records? But I want to flip that back to the service base. How do you differentiate between, we know you're over 90 million plus of assets under management that you're, controlling and as have equity in. You're controlling these deals. You're trustworthy in my book, right? Like, you've done this. You have a track record. But so does the guy across town. If we want to, we're very competitive here in the lab, right? So how do you think, because you've helped us get here, how do we differentiate ourselves even more? Like, what would be the first thing you go to if we're going to layer deeper now, where I'm a trusted source, like John, but then there's another James who has another $90 million portfolio. How do you two go to war? Because that's what it is. It's a nice competitive, fun, competitive advantage. How do you get that next advantage a layer deeper?
That's a great question. And here's how I'll answer that. And this is something that I work with my coaching clients on. The first step here is you're looking at the lens backwards.
Okay. Enlighten us.
So the way the question is asked when you're thinking about how do we differentiate ourselves, I don't think it's about differentiating yourself. I think it's about what that person needs and understanding how do you connect to that individual. So when you think about building a personal brand, part of what you're really focusing on is how do you connect and engage with your target audience. Most people don't take the time to do this, but we actually go through a process where we walk through how to identify who your target audience is. How do you connect with them? What connective tissue do you have with them? And how do you convey those messages in a way that allow you to build a powerful relationship? Let me give you an example. I'm a dad of 2 boys. Okay. I came from corporate America. I made the pivot to go to full-time real estate, and I am based in the Midwest. So when I talk to people, I understand what motivates them. What are they looking for? I can't change my story. My story is my story, but my story is not just the things I just laid out. There's so many other facets to it, right? So when I'm connecting with individuals, part of what we're trying to figure out is what elements of my story are most interesting to you and how can I help you? It's never really about me and differentiating my services or what I do and all of that. It really comes down to the other person. And either they are going to be comfortable working with me because I understand them. I understand what it's like being a father, working full time, missing out on certain things with your kids because you're trying to balance, the vision you see for your family, investing money, making it grow, hustling as an entrepreneur, missing sleep, staying up till 2 a.m. trying to get your business going, but feeling like maybe you're slacking on the spousal side, or maybe you're not being a father, the parent, the mother that you really want to be, and we talk about prioritizing our priorities because all of this stuff is supposed to be to make our lives better. But if you're spending more time trying to build and grind, and now you're moving your family from, one city or one state to another in pursuit of a better job opportunity, but in reality, you're disrupting the lives of everybody. Those are the kind of things that eat at you, right? So I understand that. So when we're talking to people, we try to make sure that they understand who we are and that we have synergies. Let's go back to that Nike example. One of the biggest differences between Nike and Adidas is Nike has proven that they understood culture. Culture. The culture of the athlete, the culture specifically of young urban athletes for the last 20, 30 years. Adidas, Reebok, those brands have been hesitant to put certain types of athletes on their covers, right? And put commercials on there. They didn't sign the top celebrities. They didn't sign the top athletes. So they didn't get that connection. People wanted to be like Mike. Okay, Nike signed Mike. So they get that residual effect. So that's one of those things, is just building a connection. Because to your point, most of this stuff is a commodity. Shoes, services, whether it be an agency, whether it's cars, syndicators. Now, certainly you might have a short list. You may only know 1 or 2, but bottom line is it's a service that there's likely someone else who does what you do, So the question is, like you said, how do you build that trust? Well, it's through connective tissue. It's through building awareness. It's through all of those things. And our funnel, a marketing funnel is one of the introductory things you'll learn in marketing. But it starts with awareness at the top. Do people know you exist? And then it is, consideration. They know you exist. Would they consider buying or trying your product or service? Then it's trial. Will they buy or try it one time? Then it is repeat, right? So will I come back? Or did I try one time, didn't like it, or don't need it anymore, and don't? And then finally, you have loyalty. Is this the only brand or company that I would ever go to for this service? So that's our funnel. It's an inverted pyramid. And those are the steps. And for your business, you have to ask yourself that. And at every step of the way, that pyramid gets smaller and smaller. But at the top, most people don't focus on awareness of the right thing. So again, when you have a product, it's very easy because you know General Motors as a company. You certainly would know, Buick as a brand. But do you know we have the brand new Buick Encore? Well, maybe not. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I don't know about the Encore. Oh, let me tell you about the Encore. It has this and this and this. And would you consider it? Right? Because for me, father of two boys, that vehicle may be too small for me to consider. Right? So now it's like, oh, that's too small. Well, guess what? We got this one. Yeah. So that's why the branding is so key, because now if you have multiple products or services, you can then pivot and you control and build that relationship. So it's really important to be able to do that. I think one of the ways that brands, entrepreneurs can start this process is really to figure out what needs are being unmet. So one of the things we did on our side was we recognized a lot of both active investors and passive investors. They really didn't know what they didn't know when it came to looking at a deal. So we put together a sample deal package, put on our website, free for download. And for active investors, if you are finding deals, but you don't know what to put in your communication to try to tell someone about the deal, this is a way to learn more about what we do, the kind of information we put in there. And if you're a passive investor, again, this is a sample deal, it's not a real deal. But if you're a passive investor, you can look at this without being asked to invest and to actually get a sense of, okay, these are the kind of things I should be looking for. This is the kind of information. This is how a deal should be presented to us. This is what I can expect. And I think it's really valuable for people to wrap their heads around that before seriously considering investing. And if you're an active investor, you may want to step back and say, wow, okay, I may not be ready to put deals in front of people because I didn't do this kind of research. I don't know about the market. I don't know what companies are in this area. I don't know what the rents, could be or should be. Maybe that allows you to step back, put together a better business plan. So when you're presenting to people, you can speak with more confidence, you can speak with more credibility, and you can actually build on the connections that you have. So that's available on our website. It's at casmoncapital.com/sample deal. But it's one of the ways that any investor or any entrepreneur can create value by understanding what their audience is looking for, giving them the ability to take that on a trial basis or free basis, and then serve that audience. So that's something that we've done to help our audience. And if you're an entrepreneur, think about how you might be able to replicate that for yourself.
That's so good. Gosh, I love it. You're like awareness, consideration, and then you have the third one was running a trail. Is it?
Trial. Yeah. Awareness, consideration, trial, and loyalty.
Yeah, and repeat customers, repeat and loyalty. So first of all, I kind of love how you tied that together, because I'm really getting enlightened as I'm listening to you, as well as the product. When it serves a need, and sometimes it really doesn't matter who made it, right? Often, really. But then you shift it to the service; it's a commodity, and so then the connective tissue is key, and part of what you've done. And I know you're savvy enough that you probably did it intentionally, but if you guys are listening, you haven't caught on, is not only did John teach us something, but then he gave us an example. And then he said, you can actually check out the sample, just like you could do for your business. He's giving you a way to connect with him, right? And he's giving you kind of like a case study that you can implement, so that I always say people can't do business with you if they don't understand what you do. Right. So that connective tissue. And then a layer deeper, John told you he has 2 kids, he's from Chicago, lives in Cincinnati, now building that rapport. And he kind of looks like me. I kind of like this guy. Right. And then you're kind of going from there. And so I would definitely encourage you guys to, if you're listening, and you're driving, first of all, hold on to the steering wheel. We'll include that in the show notes. But those of us who are listening, it's just casmoncapital.com/sample deal. Is that right, John?
That's right. Yep.
Definitely plug into that, because I think what John has done is he's helped us tie it all together of helping us understand with his branding background how you can kind of form a bridge with your audience, whether you have a product or you have a service, a commodity, to then separate yourself from the pack and also build that connective tissue, which is so key. One of the things you talked about as we opened this was the awareness. So clearly you're very also aware of the marketplace and how it responds to you. But one thing we were connecting the dots on was that awareness of knowing the mindset that you need to have, right? You called it the golden handcuffs, and then you went to real estate. I'm very curious. The first step, going back to square one, did you first, we talked mentorship, we talked partners. Did you first become a passive investor before you jumped in, or did you first become a general partner? What was that first initial step? Because I remember you talked about in another episode how it's not about seeing the entire staircase, it's about taking the next step. So I want to kind of give some context to our listeners as to what may someone who's transitioning take that next step look like.
Yeah, and I think, listen, if you are ready to change where you're at today and move towards the life you want to create, figuring out the next logical step is key. So for me, when I was in that position, we had built a small portfolio, but it certainly wasn't anything that I could leave my job or change careers or whatever off of, right?
That was a passive investment?
No, that was my own active investment. But I will tell you this. If I could go back, knowing what I know now, I would have started as a passive investor. And the reason is I basically took on a second job. I was looking to create more free time and flexibility. But when I built my small portfolio, 2-unit, 3-unit, 8-unit building, a couple flip projects, I found myself spending a lot of my time checking on these various projects, following up with maintenance people, checking in on contractors on how things were going. And I created a second job for myself. And that was the complete opposite of what I was hoping to do as far as creating more flexibility in my life. So passive investing wasn't something that I was very familiar with. So I just really didn't think about it. But if you're someone who maybe you have family, you've got, we talk to busy professionals. Those are folks who really focus on investing with us. If you're a busy professional, you can invest passively where your time is spent figuring out who you want to invest with, understanding what their investment strategy is. And if that aligns with what you're hoping to accomplish, you can simply invest with them. You don't have to deal with maintenance. You don't have to deal with, tenants or being a landlord, but you get all the benefits of being a real estate investor. So that's one path. I would say that there are 3 ways I see people get started. One is being a general partner, which is what we did. We had already built up a small portfolio, so we had some experience, and we did have some investors who were looking to get going. So we were able to partner with another operator and join as general partners. So that was a great way for us, but we already had some momentum going down that pathway. But that's one way. The other way is to start small and do your own deals, which is, the other way we got going. We've started with a house hack. We bought a 2-unit building. We lived in 1 unit, rented out the other unit. So you can certainly start small, manage your own properties, and scale from there. That takes time, and you need to be able to invest time overseeing that property. So that's the one caveat there. And then a third way, as we mentioned, is being a limited partner or being a passive investor. So that's something that most people can do if you have the funds. So if you have money, little time, that's a great way to do it. If you have time and little money, you probably need to be more active, more hands-on. Maybe you're not ready to buy and hold. Maybe you need to wholesale or do some other things to kind of create capital through real estate. But there are lots of ways to get going. I think it comes down to making sure you solve the right problem. The mistake I see people make all the time is they pick a path because they heard someone like me on the show talking and it sounded cool and sexy, and they jumped into it, but they didn't think about their own situation and what they were truly trying to solve for. So our LP passive investors are typically looking for more cash flow. They want some appreciation, some upside potential, but they also are looking to lower their tax liability, and they're busy. They don't want to be a landlord. They want to get the benefits of owning real estate without being a landlord. And that's a great way for them to come in and partner with us. If you want to be hands-on, that's great. The people who work with us are very happy to collect the checks and let somebody else do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we talked about a lot of key pillars today, and I want to connect the dots as well as far as tactically, because we do like to give tactical advice in the lab for someone who's maybe thinking, okay, great, I need to connect with a guy like John, or what, I want to get started with a guy like John. You're truly a practitioner, right? Because you have the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit, right? Which is, and then again, I failed to mention this, and I apologize when we open up the show, but to give some real context, the Target Market Insights show has over 300 plus episodes. So that tells me you're consistent and you understand a thing or two about being consistent. So kudos to you for that. I definitely want to, I salute right back at you.
Hey, Ruben, can we pause right there? Because
Yes,
what
sir.
you just said is exactly what I mean on branding.
Yeah.
Right? You just said that. I didn't say that to you. You said, I see that you have 300 plus episodes, so I see that you are consistent. That's what I mean. When you develop, content is just one way of doing this, but by putting out 300 plus episodes, that automatically tells you, well, this is a guy who's consistent. You can look at the times as well. Every week, our shows come out every week, 300 plus episodes. I think for the last 150 episodes or so, it's been twice a week. So you can go back and look at the dates of publication. If you know nothing else about me, nothing else, you can look at this and say, he's showing up every week for the last 300 plus episodes.
Yeah.
This is a guy who didn't just try it, cool, whatever, and walked away. He was consistent. So these are little nuances that people can pick up. And this is why branding is so key.
Yeah. And that's our connective tissue, because I understand. Right. Like, exactly. I understand. And someone else I might not, who doesn't have that, and I love what you said. You don't have to change. Well, you can reinvent yourself, but who you are is who you are, and what you do is what you do, and how you do one thing is how you do everything. But I connect with that and I resonate with that because I know how long it takes. I've seen people start these things. Oh, you're on episode 12. Okay, great. Good luck. Let's see you pass the 100 episode milestone, then 150. Then I know that you're for real. Right. And so, I love that you stopped me. I thought I was in trouble. I thought I'm like, Ruben, where but I love that you're absolutely right. And what I was saying with that, you're putting in these actions, right? Like I started my own meetup too as well. And what I was trying to do there, John, is what does that look like, right? Putting yourself out there. If you want to start like you, what would be the first thing if you're looking to transition? Because that's how we started. What was the first thing? Let's put it back to you. What was the first thing you tapped in on? You're like, do I need to shake as many hands as possible? Do I need to let people know that this is what I'm doing now and start a podcast? What was kind of like the first thing that you feel in this marketplace already kind of gives you, again, a unique branding advantage?
Well, I hired a mentor. And the reason I hired a mentor was, and keep in mind, I had built a small portfolio. So I felt like I could do this by myself. I'm a savvy guy, been in corporate. I felt like I could figure it out. Yeah. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And when it comes down to partnering with other people and their money, I wasn't arrogant to think that I could just figure it out and go. I wanted to have someone in my corner who could help me navigate this, but then also understand where those differences lied. Where are the areas that are similar to corporate America, where I can kind of take some of the things I've learned and run with it, and where are the places where it's different and you're going to need to adjust. And when you are dealing with people, it's very different. When I'm, if I'm writing, we talked about product versus service, right? And difference between personal and corporate. Well, personal, I know the people on the other end of it, right? It's different when you're talking to someone you've had lunch with versus when you are just sending a signal to, over TV or random email of people who signed up that you've never met in your life. There's no emotional attachment to me sending an email to, 500,000 people across the country about our latest product. I don't care if they, right? I'm looking at numbers. Oh, we got a 4% open rate. That's kind of low. We're going to tweak it, adjust it, but we're just looking at numbers. I don't care that such and such. When it's a personal brand and your best friend from high school don't read your email, you feel that. Why does Timmy not? Why Timmy's just ignoring all my emails? He unsubscribed from my email list. Does Timmy not like me? Does he think I'm going to fail? Like, you just take this to a whole different place, right? So for me, I think the first thing is hire someone to help. That's what I did, because I needed to understand how to remove the emotional side of that and understand the business and make that transition from it's never personal, it's business. You just didn't add enough value for Timmy to read your email. And that's a cold hard fact, but it's true. Timmy doesn't care about what you're doing. You have to make Timmy care. And if you don't understand what Timmy is concerned about, Timmy's not going to care. Now, if you know Timmy should care, then that's on you to say, maybe I didn't say this the right way. How do I revise my messaging so that Timmy understands how we can actually help him, right? But that's where it gets a little bit nuanced. So I think bringing in the right people. I know you have a business where you focus on folks like myself who are busy creating content, but maybe we're not getting our message in front of the right people because we're not saying the right things. We're not repurposing it in the platforms where they really play. So that's something that's really key, right? So I think you have to look at where you're at. If you're getting started, how do you build the right team to help you see the things you can't see? Because when it's your brand, there's absolutely blinders. There's no way around it. You will certainly have blinders. You're going to have some emotional connections. If you're making Facebook posts and you're not seeing much engagement, or again, I mentioned the emails, when you can actually see who opened your emails and who didn't open your emails, and you've got friends and family who aren't reading your stuff, like that's a whole different thing. So it can weigh on you, but bring in the right people, and that's going to help you navigate that landscape, and then try to just remove yourself from the emotional attachment because you're running a business. And a business, I always tell it to people like this: if you were to go out there and start, a bakery, and let's say your core clients were big parties, big events, right, and selling these sheet cakes was how you made the most of your money. Are you going to call everybody and make them buy a sheet cake, or try to ask them to buy a sheet cake? Or are you going to tell people that you launched this business, you launched this bakery, and if anyone's doing a wedding, a big birthday party, or a large gathering, anniversary gathering, you'd love an ability to connect with them and tell them more about your business, right? That's a way more effective way of doing it. Finding your core target investor or your target audience. And that's what we talk about as well when we're coaching other people, is it starts with that. You can't just go to your mom and say, Mom, I just started this bakery, buy a sheet cake. Mom doesn't need it. She might buy it just because she's your mom, but she doesn't need a sheet cake, But if your mom knows, a friend from church is having a big wedding in 6 months and she's looking for bakers now to help cater the event, that's where that introduction could be very valuable for you, right? So it's more of that of an approach, but you have to understand how to set everything up, because again, if you go back to systems and processes, if you have no way of managing and controlling this, it can feel overwhelming, right? Because how do you know who's having a wedding, what day, unless you have systems and processes to navigate these conversations? So that's what we help people with, is understanding what the process is, what the messages are, how to build your network, even if you don't have those people today, how to leverage your network to create the network you really need for your business. And I think this transcends real estate. This is really for any business. And I just gave you an example with the baker. So that's where I would start. Putting the right people around your team to help you create the systems and processes with the blueprint that you need to be successful. That's where I would start. You'd save yourself a lot of time and energy.
Yeah. We don't, that's one thing that I love how you're tying this together, because you talked about awareness, and one thing that we don't talk about enough, or at least I know in our world we do, but maybe those listening who might be, maybe in the corporate world or whatever the case might be, there's folks in, investing in themselves, but being able to invest into your blind spot is key. Whether it's masterminds, mentorships, that's one thing I literally, we talk about this all the time. And the awareness of knowing what you don't know, right? Or the awareness of knowing that you need help to then invest in that. And a lot of money should be invested in yourself, especially if you're expecting others to invest in you. I think that's one thing where it's funny, because it always does go back to the mindset, doesn't it?
It does, man. And it's funny because I'm not one of those guys. I'm not a mindset dude. I mean, when I first got in real estate, I was a bigger pockets guy, and I was not of the belief that you need to spend all this money on, coaches and events and all this stuff. And what I found is the mindset is so important. You have to invest in it. Like, it is it is so challenging to organically have the kind of mindset every day without investing in it, whether that's through your morning rituals, whether it's through coaches and mentors, whether it's through masterminds, whether it's through networking events. You have to find a way to invest in your mindset because, and I still struggle with this myself. I mean, there are days when I feel invincible, where I could kill it. And no matter what the task is, I feel like I can knock it out. And there are days where I'm like, oh man, like what? And it'd be the same task. It's just a different day. It's different. I woke
Yeah.
up late. I didn't get my morning routine. Oh man. Oh, how am I gonna do this? Right. And that's why mindset is so key, because one of the things I always tell people is whenever you're facing a situation, you don't know how you're gonna get something done. Don't ask yourself, you know, don't throw the pity party, that kind of stuff. Just ask yourself, how can I do this? If you are thinking I can't do this, or oh my goodness, this is going to be hard, that's not the place. But if you can ask yourself, how can I do this? Now you're putting yourself in a solutions focused initiative to find the answers. And when you're training your mind to think like that, the answers, they open up,
Yeah.
and it's not as complex as you think. And sometimes it is a matter of having the right people around you.
Yeah.
I mean, I have two coaches that I work with. You mentioned my podcast, so I get to speak with other investors and entrepreneurs every week. I run a meetup still. I run a mastermind group of my own, and then I attend other events as well. So I'm constantly surrounding myself with other people who can pour into me. I can pour into them, and I get inspired. I mean, you talk to someone who goes out and crushes something, that is exhilarating to see
Mhm.
that you've been able to help somebody do that, and it helps reinforce that thing for you. There's a book called Atomic Habits, and it talks about habit stacking. It's my favorite book,
James
and
Clear. Yeah.
yeah, one of the things I love about the book is it talks about how every day you are reinforcing a version of yourself. If you're trying to lose weight, for instance, it's not about
Mhm.
losing weight, it's about being athletic, or being a runner. And you are either depositing something in the bank that says, I am an athlete, I am a runner, or you're not. And it's not about the weight, it's about becoming the person you want to be. We talked about this earlier, right? If you want to be an investor, if you want to be an entrepreneur, are you investing in that vision every single day? That's what you've got to focus on. And if you surround yourself with the right people, you are taking the right actions, you are doing the things you need to do to be a successful investor, a successful entrepreneur. You have to do that, and that's all mindset. Because if you're not, then there's a block that you got to overcome. Why not? Do you not believe in yourself? Is the golden handcuffs too much for you to really walk away from? Is this just a dream? Like, there's something else that
Wow.
you're gonna have to seriously address. And I think if you can really understand that mindset, it will truly unlock the potential. And it's something that it's a challenge, and a lot of people work on it. That's why you hear people like me talk about coaching so much, because we believe in it. And I mean, I talk to my coaches and I feel like I'm ready. When I wrap that conversation, I'm like, man, okay, I don't know how I missed this the first time, but maybe I just needed somebody to remind me how great I was. But you do, man. You got to pep talk yourself. You got to
Dude.
remind yourself, like, yo, man, I go through daily affirmations.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really important to remind yourself of what you're capable of, and you can leverage that to succeed. Because if you would have told me 5 years ago that we'd be partners in $100 million worth of real estate, I probably would have just laughed at you nonstop. Inconceivable for me. Just, it wasn't a goal, it wasn't something I was thinking about. And it's not to say we've hit all of our financial goals, but it's to say that when you just start going down the path with the right mindset, the possibilities just open up. Like there's not a hurdle that I don't think we could overcome with the right resources, process, patience, and all of those things. But again, starting out, no, I wouldn't have set a goal like that for myself. That would have been just asinine to me.
That's amazing. Just listening to you, it's, you experimentation knows that as you're listening to these things, it's the proof is in the pudding, and the clues start to repeat themselves. And one thing I wanted to piggyback on when you say how can I, it reminds me of my TEDx talk said, stop asking how can I and start asking who. Right. So to piggyback a layer, as well as when you start thinking of the how can I, you also start thinking, okay, well, I know John's done this before, so maybe I should connect with him. And then that's kind of like the solution, right? So I wanted to piggyback on that, but to bring it back full circle, I think you did such a wonderful job today. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is my recap. We take notes in the lab. I got a bunch of notes for this here, and I'm trying to recap it for our listeners here. Is you start with awareness, and that awareness then allows you to even go deep into your own mindset. And having the right mindset allows you to take the right actions. And then when you do take the right actions, it allows you to build connective tissue with other people you're trying to involve yourself into your endeavors. We talked about the connective tissue with personal branding, especially on the service level, where people like myself, I'm able to recognize that John has a 300 plus podcast amongst the many other things that he's done successfully. And I resonate with that. And I connect with that because he had the right mindset and he took action. And then the action turns into results that over time compound. And then shout out to Atomic Habits, because it's kind of like the sequel of the compound effect. It is just that. And then you look back and you're like, wow, we've come such a long way, and we've impacted and lifted others along the way. And in your world, it's having the ability to invest with people, to having the ability to have people invest with you at Casmon Capital Group, and to uplift them, to change their mindset. And one thing that you said that really resonated with me before we started the episode is literally you had your best man or even wife that you were saying, if I got that correctly, that you didn't push. You lead with action, and then they come to you when they're ready, which I thought was very admirable. And if we tie the branding together, that is what branding is all about. So I can't thank you enough for stepping into the lab. Did I miss anything, by the way? Because I'm an open book. I'm here to learn.
Man. I felt like, obviously you're interviewing me, so I felt like I talked way too much. But no, man, I'm happy to have the conversation. And you're right. I think the biggest thing here is take action. Whatever you are facing right now, listen, podcasts are great. I've done over 300 episodes as a host. I've done a lot more as well as a guest. And the biggest thing is you have to take action. Don't listen to this and say, "Ooh, cool episode, Ruben. Thanks, John, for the tips." And then that's it. Like, what is the next step you need to take? Is there something that either Ruben or I can help with? Is there something that someone else can help with, whether it be a marketing specific thing, investing? I gave you the sample deal package for a reason, to help you get a sense of, what an investing deal looks like. As an entrepreneur, is there a hire you need to make? Is there something you need to delegate in your business? Is there a mentor or coach you need to hire? Is there a vendor or service to help you repurpose content? There's so many different things. But what is a step that you can take right now? What is an action item that you can do today, the next 24 hours? So don't tell me you want to invest in real estate or whatever. Like, that's cool. That's not a step. You can download a sample deal package. You can send an email to Ruben to say, thank you for that episode. You can leave a 5-star review on Ruben's podcast. There's a step you can take that either pours into someone else or allows you to get a step closer to where you want to be. What is that step? Identify it and take action. That's a challenge for the next 24 hours. Figure out what you can do right now and do something to move yourself closer to the person you want to be.
Boom. I've never had a guest recap the episode and just leave it with such a bang and give me the honor to just end the episode on such a good note. So John, thank you for doing that. I wouldn't expect anything less. I definitely want to know we're about being resourceful here and tactical in the lab. So as John said, make sure you go to CasmonCapitalGroup.com/sample deal. Did I get that right?
That's right.
And make sure you check that out. Is there anything else? I know you're super active in the space, man. Like, is there anything we should be looking out for you in the space? Again, after we've taken some action, where else can we tap in more into your world, into what's going on maybe in the next quarter or so?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing is, if you download that sample deal package, you'll also get on an email list. We'll send some follow-up communications about both more tips and insights on evaluating deals, multifamily marketing tips and insights, and then you'll have a chance to learn more about what we've got in the works from there. So the best thing is really download that sample deal package.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I have to say, a big inspiration of mine for helping us launch the new digital real estate asset series, which this will be definitely a part of. But you want to definitely make sure you tap into the Target Market Insights podcast, because, like I said, there's nothing more like, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, understanding the difference between an asset like the multifamily real estate space and then understanding the power of marketing, which today you've also learned how branding differentiates with marketing as well. So on that note, we saw you conquered. John, I can't thank you enough for stepping in the lab. And just like that, we are out.
Hold up. We've come to the end of the Real Estate Experiment show, brought to you by my team at investedtalent.com. However, the show will certainly not stop from here, because you will share this with someone who was not in the lab with us. Any value that you found was helpful, any experiment that you feel can benefit someone else who was not here, please share it with them. And number two, definitely leave us a review. It helps us, and it helps other people find our show to benefit from experimenters like yourself, right? We are trying to build an experiment nation where the experiments that you resonate the most with, you will double down on. That is the goal. Now, the reason why the show does not end here is because my team at Invested Talent repurposes this show so that other people who are not consuming the show, either by the medium that you're consuming it now, whether it's a podcast, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Instagram, wherever you are, we will take clips from this show and repurpose them and amplify them, put them on multiple social media platforms so that the message and the experiments can be consumed in a way that fits the person best. Now, if you'd like to have the same for your brand, make sure you go to investedtalent.com, where we've helped multiple thought leaders in the real estate space repurpose their content so that they can grow their brand. We specifically work with people who are looking to have an impact, whether you have an existing show or a brand new show, whether it's a podcast, whether it's clips or interviews or episodes. We will take that raw content and repurpose it on multiple social media platforms, because your voice, your experiments need to be heard in the marketplace so that we can all have an impact, so we can impact others and we can all elevate together. On that note, make sure you tune into the next one, and let's build, y'all.